You're listening to the Sketchnote Army Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Rohde, the author of the Sketchnote Handbook and the Sketchnote Workbook, and this is the podcast where I chat with sketchnoters and visual thinkers and try to understand what makes them tick. Hey, are you looking for the ideal sketchbook for your sketchnoting practice? The Sketchnote Idea Book is the sketchbook designed for sketchnoters. Equipped with no bleed, no show-through paper, you can take almost any marker or pen you can throw at it. Get 10% off with code ARMY at airship.store. Hey everyone, it's Mike and I'm here with Jimi Holstebro. Jimmy, welcome to the show. It's so good to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's an interesting name that you have, and I think you gave me a hint as to your name. Why don't you reveal to the listeners how you ended up with Jimmy when you live in Denmark?
Yeah. Mostly because my father was a huge Jimi Hendrix fan, so they chose to call their firstborn son Jimmy. Actually, we're calling me Jimmy today, but in Danish it's Jimmy with like a soft J, and it's pretty darn hard both for Danes and for everybody else to understand the Jimmy. So we go with Jimmy.
Interesting. Yeah. Cool. Well, and so tell us a little bit about where you live and what you do.
I will. I'm living actually smack in the middle of Denmark, in the part of Denmark that's called Jutland, which is the mainland. You know, there's a lot of islands, sealands, Funen, and we have Jutland. And in the middle of Jutland, there's a city called Viborg. It's a small city with 40,000 people living there. It's a beautiful old city with what's it called, one of those very old churches we have in Europe, which have been, like a trade city, an important city where the court is also the old court from that part of Denmark. So beautiful city with some lakes, and it has a good football team. It has some handball. It has stuff. And actually, I ended up here because I moved here with my children's mother back in the day when she started in school as a nurse. They have a nursing school here. Originally, I come from the top of Denmark, the top of Jutland, at a city by the sea called Frederikshavn. So actually, I did my childhood. My childhood was in a small fisherman's town called Frederikshavn.
Wow.
Yeah. And in there, back there in the day, I was like, a little introvert kid. That's not really true, but introvert in the way that when I came home, I sat down and took out all my pencils and my markers and sat drawing, listening to music, and just sat drawing all afternoon and reading comic books. I think maybe you heard that kind of story before, but people interested in drawing, they had hours and hours of reading comics and then trying to draw it themselves. So
yeah, I had that history myself. Living our best lives as kids, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of it. Normal school. We have in Denmark. We also have, we have just a primary school, and then we go to some sort of high school. And after high school, I started to read to become a teacher. But when I was doing that, I applied to get into to the art academy. And actually, I got in. It's not something you just do. It's there's a lot of people trying to get in, and just few getting in there. So I got in there and got my master's degree in fine arts.
Really?
Back in the start of the middle of 2000 something. 5, 6 or something like that.
Did you have a specialty in the fine arts? Was there an area that you focused on?
Yeah. Actually, it was mostly drawing and graphics, like old school graphics. I don't what's it called in English. I don't really know. But where you have paper you put on rolls and you
Oh
do
yeah,
like
printing, yeah.
printing,
Lithographs
yeah,
or something.
printing, of course, yeah, stuff like that. I did that a lot. So
Hmm.
always been very, very interested in the line, in the black and white, working a lot. You just showed me you have one of the books I made for Neuland, which is
Yeah.
also just a line, very very simple, and I'm a huge fan of that. So just drawing, just black and white, I love it.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah, yeah, uh, yeah, and that's kind of it. Then just started my artistic career from there.
Interesting. And
Kind
so what do
of.
you tell us a little bit about what you do now?
Yeah, actually, I've been the last decade. I've been independent. Let's call it graphic facilitator, because that's a word people understand. Actually, I'm not very fond of it anymore, and I'm referring more and more to myself as just being in Danish it's tegner, but draw. I draw. Yeah, yeah. Because that's what I do.
And
I'm
I think
not.
everybody understands it too, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They do now, because when I think graphic facilitation popped up in Denmark like 12, 15 years ago or something like that, and some people started doing it, and I actually quite fast got a grip of it and heard of it and tried it, and got a lot of jobs all of a sudden, because it was also the time when social media, especially Facebook, started rolling. Everybody had an account. Everything that went on there was interesting. So when people saw it, they kind of just called me or wrote me, "Can you come and help us?" But before I got there, I kind of stopped with the art school in the middle of the 2000s. I didn't live from doing art, but it's kind of difficult. I think it's the same story in the United States, because when you're an artist, you're pretty much dependent on people liking your stuff.
Right.
And even though I have a master's degree, it's not like it's not like being an engineer who's coming to tell you, when we build this bridge, we need these materials, we need everything has to be mathematically calculated to fit so the bridge won't fall. And when I come with my theoretical ideas about art, and tell people it has to be like this, because my references compared to other artists, blah blah blah, people just say, but I don't like it. I don't care. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So and the internet wasn't, there were no social media. So when I tried to sell art, I had to drive around showing people my stuff and try to get into galleries or art shows and stuff like that. And it was kind of difficult, actually. So I went back to teaching, started teaching again, and actually quite fast got into managing. I started at a small school, and they asked if I would like to manage the school. So actually, I ended up doing management for 10 years.
Wow.
And in the area of special needs.
Oh, okay.
Kids and youth with special needs. And that kind of, that was interesting, because they didn't learn like
in a traditional way, right?
Traditional way. So and actually I used comics very much, and the understanding of that, how to, the way it's sequenced, the sequential build of a strip was much easier for them to understand, how to, when they had to read text or understand connections with things. So that kind of opened up something for me in terms of, okay, this is interesting in many ways. What if we do it in other terms? And also did it with with the people I managed, in some ways started to, using all of this. And then graphic facilitation kind of, popped up, and then it started to make a whole lot more sense to work with stuff in this way. And then you can see, meanwhile, working as a manager, I think maybe I have a little I don't know, maybe I have a little HDHD or something, ADHD, something like this, because I've always been, very, very busy with, especially while working, always taking some kind of still keeping on educating myself, because I read like I have a degree in management. I have a degree in facilitating, and I also have a master's degree in communication. So
Wow. Wow.
I read a lot. I read a lot and kind of built on, and because it became obvious for me, because it's nice to have a master of fine arts, because but then you're an artist, and people, they kind of expect you to be like a happy camper with brushes and paint on your clothing, and not always it's not always seriously. So I had to somehow put some aspects to my CV that kind of made me have some weight in when I talked about communication. That became obvious for me the last decade or something. So I built on with my education, meanwhile working both with management, and then the switch to working with the graphic facilitation, so that I kind of had some weight when I told people about why visual communication was actually working, and how it worked and stuff like that. Yeah.
Interesting. So you sort of build that in.
Sorry. Yeah, and I built that in. Yeah. Sorry.
No, yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting the way you've sort of build in the things that you saw were missing as something you're interested in, but it also provided sort of, what's the word, gravitas, or like the credibility or something, right?
Exactly.
When you would go to a business to say, well, I've done all these studies. I guess you probably wouldn't say that, but it would be in your history, so they would see that pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So the last a little more than a decade now, I've been I've been independent graphic facilitator or drawer, doing drawings for people in all kinds of ways. Traditional graphic recordings or scribing or whatever we call them, where I've of course started out with markers on papers in big style, huge papers, wallpapers, and then I've been doing, of course, I would like to say, a lot of teaching in using markers or the way of drawing as a means to communicate in for others in their way of communication or teaching or stuff like that. I've been doing a whole bunch, hundreds of small what's it called, animated videos, the ones where you see the hand draw or something like, and voiceovers and stuff like that. They also have a lot of different names. I just call them drawn videos.
I think whiteboard animation. It's common.
Yeah, something. Yeah, they have all kinds of words. And then I also do, like, I call it strategic drawings. Where people want somehow to unfold their strategies, the visions. They have like 40 pages hidden on an H drive somewhere in the business that nobody ever looks at, but to make it to make it live in the company, it actually helps to put it on a poster or make it hang in the walls in the cantina or something like that, so that all the employees actually see what's going on, and they can see themselves in that process and so. And I do loads of that as well. So mainly I've been doing that the last 10 years, and been very, very happy about it. It has taken me all around, actually the world, all around the world, but mainly in Denmark, of course. But I've been traveling also different other countries to do drawings for companies, and it's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Wow. And I kind of love the way that you sort of built this combination. So you began as a teacher, you practically were a teacher and then a manager, but you've had this art background. When you were a kid, you were drawing and looking at comics. It like sort of this I don't know, collection of all these components that now you're applying, right? So you have to manage people and yourself. You have to teach them, and those processes. You know how to draw, but you're also then teaching that to other people, and then using it, of course, as a way to communicate. So your communication skills So you've really made use of all the backgrounds that you put into yourself, and you're applying them
Exactly.
all, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. It kind of makes, it's very holistic, the way I've both my history with drawing and management, organizations, and then the tools I acquired and putting it all together. It's very holistic, and I'm living. I'm getting up every day, and I'm not getting to work. I'm just doing my
Having
thing.
fun. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's great.
exactly.
That's kind
Yeah,
of
it
the
is.
ideal place where you want to be, right? If you can.
Yeah, it kind of is. Of course, making drawings for other people on their demands is a little. It's not the same as the artistic me, of course, because I also
Yeah.
do still I still do a lot of art, which is mostly the place where I do my own thing.
Yeah.
And that's a different language than the one I apply when I do business with people, because
Yeah.
it is another game, but it smells like art in a very very satisfying way.
Yeah.
I own my skills in drawing and communication all the time with the work, and I really love it. Of course, the long term idea for me is, of course, to settle down in the mountains somewhere. I don't know, Italy, France, in a little cabin, walking around half naked, just like wine in the one hand and brush in the other hand, and living from my own art, something like that.
Well, it's still a possibility.
It is, and that's a good thing about it.
Yeah. That's really fascinating. I'm kind of curious to give me like a sampling of a project. You sort of given generalities about the kinds of projects. Is there a project that you can tell us about? Of course, sometimes NDAs apply, of course. But a project you can tell us about that you're excited about that would give us a sense of like the kind of work you mostly do, like for a client.
Yeah, yeah, I can do that. I'm right now. I am I'm doing almost putting last bricks together with a strategic drawing for a company in Denmark. They reached out, and that's kind of very normal process for me. Client reaches out, say they need me to come and summarize, live draw, something at a meeting. And then the last handful of years, that has never been satisfying enough for me. So I asked the client, okay, why do you want me to do that? What do you need the output to do? And it always baffles the clients, because they have heard something about live drawing, and they want a really nice poster of what has been going on. And even though I am pretty good at drawing, and I'm also pretty fast at drawing, it is also very much to ask of me to come in a couple of hours and summarize a whole lot of strategic processes, boiled down to like a couple of hours. And my question to the client always is, but I can do that. I can do that, and I will listen to what you say. But are you sure you want that to be the output you're putting to life when I leave? Because that will be my very subjective what's it called, boiling down of what you're telling me in that specific time frame. I can do that, and you can pay for that, but wouldn't it be greater if you kind of introduced me a whole lot more to all the strategic reasoning behind what you're doing? And then we make it into a small process where I then try to sketch what I see and hear from that. And then we have some back and forth ping pong about what, and at the end out with me inking it up, making it look nice, and coloring, and then you have like a poster where you really really have ownership of what's going on, instead of me just subjectively drawing all kinds of things I hear in a small time frame. And then also the businessman in me also makes it much clearer for people to understand that from here on, it's also, you also have almost the manuscript for if you want to make a small animated movie out of it afterwards. And I can deliver you packages with all the drawings on each own, so you can use them in PowerPoint. You can do all kinds of things because you get like a digital package.
Yeah,
and people always go with that because it makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of a typical way I do these projects. And then again, if it's an animated video they start out reaching out for, I also kind of make them buy posters and stuff like that in the other end, because it makes sense to have all these components put together so you can, as a company, use it in a way. I think it makes sense for you as a designer as well, to have things
right.
Have a red line through all the things I do for them. So they have like a package I can unfold on different platforms afterwards. And of course it makes sense,
That's more of a suite.
That would be kind of a something like that. And that would be a typical process or project for me to be involved in. And it's kind of I know it's pretty selfish, but it's because I'm also a little, when I started out, I just did everything the customers asked me to. I did this and that, but I also, become a little lazy and a little more self-centered. I want to deliver something that I'm very proud of when I deliver it. Back when I started, I just wanted as much as possible. I wanted to draw, come out, visit everybody, go everywhere, do everything. But now I've grown a little older, and I'm a whole lot more interested in just sitting down, really nerding, deep diving into the drawings, and have my own party and fun with doing the drawings and making them look, awesome. So it's kind of funny, but it works and it makes sense for the customers as well. So everybody's happy. It's a win-win.
Well, I would think that if you're going to put that much energy into it, you might as well get exactly what the customer wants and also what you want, right?
Exactly.
Then just to, 80% of the way do it, I don't know. So anyway, so I'm kind of curious, how do you convince the customer? This might be helpful for someone listening. How do you move them from, well, we just want you to come in for a day and draw things, and then you end up with this subjective perspective? How do you sort of move them into the next? Are there certain things that they respond to that someone listening could integrate into their own practice to do the same thing? Like, what can our listeners learn from your approach to help do that?
Yeah, I think mostly as I started out saying, most clients don't really know exactly what I'm doing. They know I draw. They know I draw, and they heard of graphic facilitation, recording, something like this, and they've seen drawings, and they instinctively know how it works. When they look at a drawing, they want to look at a drawing, and they get curious about it and look more at it and read some of the stuff. They don't do that with the 40 pages on the D drive, right? So instinctively they have an understanding of this kind of works. So when I unfold and I question them more and more about, but which kind of output do you really want? I think they kind of understand where I'm coming from and what it is I actually do. So they have like this kind of revelation as, can we really do this? So can this be the end product? Is that possible? So I think that's I'm kind of opening their eyes to what the drawings actually, what it does and what it can do, and what it really is, and how it is unfolded and put into work when it's best. And which is something that I'm very, very interested in, or all the things around it, because also I've been studying it, and I think it's very interesting, and I want to study even more about how is it works and functions the way it does for us, you know.
mm, mm.
And I think it's just I don't know if I'm pretty good at persuading people or something, but I don't think it really is this, but I think it makes sense for people to hear that I can come draw for you live, and then I leave, and then you're left there maybe with a piece of paper, maybe digital, whatever, and then what? And then they, you know, maybe also kind of get scared because they don't know what to do from
Yeah,
there, because
yeah,
they don't have the skill set to, you know, to, but maybe even if they have a digital drawing, you know, they will put it into Word or other program and cut it, and it won't look nice if they need
yeah.
some of it, you know. So they're also happy to have me guide them and help them in all of the process. And when I tell them, but if we make a drawing here that's pretty good, you can have that as a standout component you can use in
Hmm.
PowerPoints or whatever, in mails and stuff like that. That also compels them to go with it, I think. Yeah.
It almost
And
seems
then
like, oh, go ahead.
yeah, and then normally, of course, it will be a tiny bit more expensive to do
Right.
the process, but not that much again, because I charge more when I'm out drawing live
Mm,
than when I have the opportunity to sit back at my office. You know, then I can work at different projects at the same time,
mm,
and I can use my time in a better way. So in that way, that will make it a bit cheaper, but then of course it will be a longer process. So it's
mhm,
normally not that much more. I charge people for one or the other. So
mm. Well, it's interesting. I think what I'm reading that you're saying, and maybe the way we can think about it is if we get in a situation with a customer or a client, is because we know they probably don't know how to apply it, at least
exactly.
effectively, but they're willing to spend this a significant amount of money to have someone come in and do this.
Hmm.
So we need to think like, well, what would be we kind of know like what would be the best application and sort of
Hmm.
think as if I were the client, what would I want? And then you present it
Hmm.
back to them and say, well, we could do components for PowerPoints and emails. Like,
Hmm.
you could even say that like I've worked with clients who had the single image. They tried to cut
Hmm.
that corner out and it wasn't exactly right. If you've got me on
Hmm.
board, we can separate that and we can make that into a component that you can use even
Exactly.
after the fact, right? Like they might get a month into like, oh, Jimmy, there's this one little part that we've just focused in this area now. Can you pull that out? And you might
Exactly.
say, well, I can't pull it out, but maybe I could just redo it based on the same thing, right?
Yeah.
You're now a
Yeah.
resource to them. So you almost need to
Yeah.
think like,
Exactly.
what is it? You sort of have a better idea of what they could do. Um,
Exactly.
and I would think that the other thing that I would imagine is once you've done it once successfully, you can then
Hmm.
show that as the proof, like, hey, look, this other company, look what they did. I
Exactly.
came in for the day, we caught some information, but then we started to collaboratively work to get it exactly right. And then we realized there
Exactly.
were five elements that we could pull from it. And here's the five elements, and here's how they used it. And here's a
Hmm.
quote from the person at that company and how they were so excited or whatever, right? You could like once you do the one, then it kind of flips the
Hmm.
next one, right? So you can think of it that way.
Exactly. Yeah,
So,
I also always do that, you know, in the mail correspondence. I always add, you know, like I did this one, you can see how I did this
mm,
one. So, and if you want to see how this one has been turned into and explain
mm,
a video, here's a link to this. So
yeah,
people also they and that's also the thing, because I'm obviously very visual in my way of thinking, which most people are, but they think they everything is written.
hmm,
So they kind of need help and guiding in
yeah,
seeing things. So I always send material so they can see how it
mm,
is. So sometimes confidential and stuff like that, but this is for
yeah,
your eyes only, you know, stuff
right,
like this.
right, yeah,
Then they also feel kind of included in
special,
something.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Yeah.
great. That's great feedback. I mean, we're not even to the tips yet, but these are great tips for
Mm,
visual thinkers who are trying to find ways to integrate this work into their
mm,
daily life or their
mm.
work life. So if you're either independent or even inside a company, you could do the
Yeah,
same thing,
exactly.
on your own time, and you'd be really surprised at how open many companies are to this. I know because I work for companies, I integrate my visual thinking all
Mm,
the time, and they're really excited when
mm.
I do it, and in fact
Yeah.
request it, right? So just because you work for a company doesn't mean this is off limits for you. This is a huge opportunity. And you might have some
Mm.
benefits that someone like Jimmy doesn't have because he's outside.
Mm.
As an insider, you could have some different perspectives and maybe some built-in, reputation that you could lean on to show this stuff since you know the inside the product so well.
Mm.
But
I kind of have a question for you, Mike.
sure.
Because in Denmark, I haven't seen the first job opening as a graphic facilitator yet. It's yet to come, and I don't understand why. But that's another discussion
Yeah.
altogether. But do you see job openings or applications that people asking for as you know as a employee on a regular basis, not just like freelancer or something like that, but
Mhm.
do you know of or have heard of graphic facilitators that are hired into larger businesses?
The only place I've seen it has been for graphic recording companies.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah,
like
yeah,
my
of
friends
course,
at
yeah,
Sketch Effect are often looking for
yeah, yeah,
new
of course,
people, right?
yeah,
They have Sketch Effect, not to focus too much on them, is they do have employees, but I think they also have freelancers, so they have a variety of
yeah,
different modes,
yeah,
right? But they will hire. I think
yeah,
I don't know if you know Heather Martinez. She's amazing
yeah,
at hand lettering. She
I
just
do.
took a position with a company and she's
Yeah.
doing something around I think vision work or something, but I can guarantee
Okay.
you that Heather Martinez is going to do visual thinking in that role, right? Like,
Mm,
so in
mm.
some ways, you probably maybe in a big company you would see that kind of a role. But I would say
Yeah.
if you're listening and you work for a company, it doesn't mean you can't do it, right?
No.
You can just find ways to integrate this. Again, your job is even as an employee is to communicate ideas
Yeah.
effectively. And if
Yeah.
visual thinking is your effective way of communication, that should be part of
Yeah.
your suite of communication tools. And
Yeah.
I,
But it's kind of funny. And I don't really understand it because now it has been,
it's
like
been a while. Yeah.
15, yeah, it's been a while, 15, 20 years or something. And there's a lot of people working with it, and of course, visual thinking, it's not like yeah, some people when I talk to, yeah, we have a graphic designer. Yeah,
It's different.
that's
Yeah.
not it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not it. Yeah, but I think that many huge companies just think about how many meetings they have every day. If they had like a visual thinker joining those meetings
Mm.
to help retain information, make it shareable, all those things that makes a visual communication interesting. That would be that's
Mm.
amazing. And I think I'm kind of doing. I'm starting to this year. I'm going to do some work and asking some questions in the proper places to why
Mm.
that's not happening yet.
Maybe it is happening and it's
Mm.
just so here and it's just so hit and miss that we just aren't aware of it.
Denmark is so small and we are so
Yeah.
few doing it. So I think I would know it.
I think a
We're
little.
like as many inhabitants in Denmark as you are in the bigger cities in the States.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
The small group.
Yeah,
I
it
mean, I
is.
guess the two things I think is one, probably companies are trained to look outside
Yeah,
and don't think
yeah,
about hiring it in.
mm,
Maybe because they feel like they're too small. But maybe that will be a shift too. So when you think about, oh, it's
mm,
probably about maybe 10 years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but lots of tech
mm.
companies bought design firms. So if you think
Yeah,
about who's providing graphic
yeah,
facilitation and recording and sketchnoting, there's firms that typically do it and they're trained to go to an
yeah,
outside firm because it's kind of a one-off thing, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
In a lot of
Totally.
cases,
Yeah,
the problem too is that when the budget gets tight, first thing to go is going to be graphic recording, right? Because we don't
yeah,
kind of don't need
yeah,
that. Let's
yeah,
right. So,
yeah,
but
exactly.
at some point there
Yeah.
may be a
But
place
that,
where
but
it's
that, but that's the thing
people,
that I'm interested in and curious about because it's not a one-off thing.
yeah, it should
As I
be.
just said, think of all the meetings that are being held, all the
Yeah.
processes that are being designed every day, and they have like
Hmm.
loads of project employees just to manage all those kinds of projects. Why don't you have one helping you to visualize it?
Yeah.
That's yeah, yeah,
See,
yeah.
maybe there's a
That's another
company
that's
for
another
the vision.
discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. This episode of the Sketchnote Army podcast is brought to you by Concepts, a perfect tool for sketchnoting, available on iOS, Windows, and Android. Concepts' infinite canvas lets you sketchnote in a defined area while still enjoying infinite space around it to write a quick note, scribble an idea, or keep pre-drawn visual elements handy for when you need them most. The infinite canvas lets you stretch out and work without worrying if you'll run out of space. And when combined with powerful vector drawing that offers high resolution output and complete brush and stroke control, you have a tool that's perfect for sketchnoting. Search Concepts in your favorite app store to give it a try.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift. Now we're sort of talking a little bit about that. Let's shift into tools. I'm really curious to hear what tools we talked before we began. We're both Neuland ambassadors, and we use their tools because they're great. So
Yeah.
I assume there must be some favorites there, but I'd love to hear about notebooks and paper and any other analog tools, and then, of course, digital tools that you like to use in your practice.
Yeah. I think I might be kind of boring in the tool ways, because I've never nerded into what kind of marker do I love the most, what kind of do I have some special pen flown directly in from Japan or anything. I'm kind of I like when I draw on paper, I like the paper to be kind of like for watercoloring, so it has to be like thick. I like that, so it doesn't bleed through. That's number one, of course. But I don't really have a favorite. I like if we have to talk about the Neuland markers, I love the brush tip, and I love that they just made the big ones with brush tips. Absolutely love it. That's my all-time favorite. But normally I just do and I have, I don't know, thousands of pens and markers, and just with the small felt tip, something like this, black. It works for me. But I can see, and then I do a lot of, when I do my arty-farty thing, I mainly paint with the acrylics and brushes, and there also I'm kind of a weirdo, because I don't have any brand or specific brushes. I just have to do, or any specific canvas, or I kind of just make do with the
whatever's available.
with what I have. Something like that. Yeah, that might be a bit weird, but yeah. I don't know. I have colleagues that really nerd into what kind of notebook they're using, what's the paper, and what's the pens like. But I never really. I'm fascinated about it, but I never really dug into it somehow. I am, and I know you said that it could be a little boring talking about the digital tools, because all of us have an iPad, and we probably also have like Wacom or something like this, and yeah, I think maybe 80-90% of all my work is done on the computer or the iPad, because for me, as I told you, as the process evolves when I'm working with clients, it's just easy for the client, and to send files back and forth, and do corrections on them, and split them into single components and stuff like that. It's just a whole lot easier. But I have, I have a big iMac, and I have the large and new Wacom Cintiq. And I really love to draw on this, and I used to draw a lot in Photoshop. Adobe's Photoshop, but a couple of years ago, it was kind of like they downgraded, they nerfed the drawing part, and I had to reinstall my brushes again and again, and I kind of grew tired of it. So now I'm mainly drawing when I'm drawing on the computer in Clip Studio. And it's a program made for making comics, and it kind of just have the tools, the pens, the stuff I need, and all the shortcuts are basically the same as Adobe. So I've been working with Adobe for, I don't know, 2-3 decades, something like that. Yeah. So it's in the fingers. So the transition to Clip Studio was painless. Just did it overnight. And then of course on the I don't know if it's of course, but I do use Procreate a lot in I miss so much, do you know the German guy Holger who made in the early days of the
That's
iPad,
right. He had an
he
app, didn't
made
he?
an app that when you he designed it for live drawing, because
Hmm.
what you did, you all the time when you projected your screen, it was the whole screen,
Yeah.
but you could sit on the iPad and work. You can zoom in and out, and
They
the
would never see
viewers,
that. Yeah.
they would never see that. But somehow it ended up with the Apple not supporting the support
Mm,
of it or something like that. So it went off again. I sometimes
mm,
I wake up in the middle of the night and really miss that one
mm,
because
mm,
it was kind of progress, but you had that single feature, and maybe it's me that haven't been smart enough to figure it out. But I haven't seen any
mm,
programs having that feature yet.
mm.
So normally now when I do live drawing on my iPad, I wait until there's a break, and then I send them like a JPEG of wherever I've gotten
Oh,
to, something like that. So that's the thing projected up on
I
the
see.
screens in the breaks anyway, something like that.
Mm.
Yeah.
I think I've seen features, and maybe it's not in Procreate. It might have been in, I have a note-taking app I use for slides, where it gives you
Yeah.
the option in the settings to say,
Yeah.
don't show the tools, right? So it would hide the tools and you just see. I don't know if they hide the zooming. I
Yeah,
kind of
but one thing
remember.
is the tool, yeah. But the zooming, that's if you're
Yeah,
sitting in your audience and watching the zoom, you would be like nauseous, you
getting
know.
sick. Yeah.
But yeah, yeah, yeah. But if anyone is listening to this, know a program that does it,
Yeah.
please make a note about it.
Let Jimmy
That would be
know.
nice.
I
Yeah,
seem to remember. Do you remember? There was a company called 53, and now it's owned by WeTransfer Paper. That app Paper. I
yeah.
think in an old version, it would do this what you talked about, where it would just show the screen. Now,
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
think you could hide the tools, but it would if you zoomed. There was a tool I can't
No,
remember what it was.
no, no.
When you zoomed, it wouldn't show the zooming. It would just show the static, and then we'd see the
Yeah,
changes
exactly.
happening.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Yeah,
I have to now. You're making me curious to poke around in my tools and see.
yeah.
Is there a tool that will do that?
Was it Nils Holger Pohl or
Yes,
something? I
yeah,
think it made, yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. He made that one. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah, but that would be nice to have, because this, of course, I talk people away from projecting it live because people will
yeah,
get nausea, and then we end up
yeah,
with a solution where it's shown in the breaks, where it's but people will just be watching in the breaks anyways. But sometimes it would be nice to have like have it projected up whilst people are talking,
yeah,
so that they could concentrate and see ideas unfolding, blah blah blah, all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. That would be nice to have in the within the whole scene anyway. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Now you're making me curious. I'll have to dig around. If I find apps that do it, I'll let you
Yeah,
know. And
yeah,
if
that
somebody's
would be
listening
nice.
and you know an app, then let Jimmy know. So
Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you.
interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
You sound like a practical guy, probably because you grew up as a kid in a fishing village, just drawing all
probably.
day, and
Yeah.
there was no special art tools when you were a kid. You just like me, like if I wanted something, I had to make it. If I wanted a comic book, I would take printer paper, cut something up and make it, right? Staple it,
Yeah.
whatever. So you just make it happen. There's no stuff for you. So I
Exactly.
think that I'm like you, like I like going into the corner drugstore and finding my favorite pen there in any
Of
city
course.
in the world, right? Or something
Yeah.
close
Yeah.
enough to it. And
Yeah.
I've always had that feeling. Like I also use a laptop because I've always wanted to feel like I could work independently of a place. So I want to be able to have the
Mm.
ability to work and not have to have, oh, I have to have this monitor and I have to have this desk and I have to have, because that
Mm.
really
Mm.
limits your ability to do work if you become adaptable to the
Yeah.
situation. That's
It's
always been
horrible.
my approach. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
maybe a little bit of a mindset in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah. It
Hmm.
wouldn't be the first time I've told myself I can't draw unless I have this gadget, and then I kind of go totally numb until I have that gadget.
Yeah.
And in the end, I also always have a notebook and a couple of pens in my bag everywhere I go, because I don't want to be limited. But
Right.
when I'm sitting in my office, I'm sitting in my living room right now. I'm not even at the office, but when I'm sitting in the office, I have thousands of gadgets and I can't find half of them. And hey, wait, didn't I have that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And at
Well,
some point, I couldn't live without that gadget.
yeah, that's funny. That's funny.
It's terrible. Yeah.
So
Mm.
for all the guests that I have on, I like to make it practical. We've done
Mm.
some of that already, but I would love to hear 3 tips. You can give more if you like, but I just asked for 3 Imagine someone is listening and maybe they're in a rut, or they just feel they're not so inspired and they need a little encouragement or inspiration. What would be three
Mm.
things that you would tell that person? It can be practical or it can be mindset stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's maybe it's obvious because we just talked about it, but don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself on gadgets, or
Hmm.
it does not have to be the right notebook or the right pen, or that's it's nice to have, but it's not you don't need it. You don't need it. Just grab paper, pencil, pen,
Mhm.
whatever you have, and start doing it. And number two would of course be exactly that. Just do it. We are so fortunate. Not like when we were kids, Mike. I had to take my bike and ride. I don't know how many kilometers to go to the
Yeah,
library if I needed any kind of inspiration other
yeah,
than what was in my mind. you know,
yeah.
uh, you just open your smartphone, your laptop, your iPad, whatever you have at your hand, and you can find tutorials. You can find everything. I would have been, I've been the greatest artist in the world if I had those opportunities when I was a kid. I think hours I have been sitting, copying stuff to get better. If I could just sit down and watch all the good guys doing all the good things and copy that
Mm.
and rehearse, that would be. And of course, that's maybe tip number three. I always kind of say to students I work with, do you play any kind of instrument?
Mm.
And people say no. If they do, they do, and if they don't, they don't. And I ask them, how do you get good at playing an instrument? Yeah, by rehearsing. Exactly. And it's the same thing with drawing.
Hmm.
If you want to be good at it, you have to
Got to do
do
it.
it.
Hmm.
Yeah. You just have to do it. But the funny thing with drawing is that we kind of all have at least 10 years experience of drawing. And it's sitting in us, it's living in us, that we kind of think that it's a thing we ought to, should have to do, could do
Mm.
better, and because we all have done a lot of drawings. As what's her name? That's embarrassing. Um, it's a TED talk, and she's talking about, that's where I first heard it. It's not her foundings, but it's the only universal language we have, and it's
Mm.
and it's evolving all over the globe in the same fashion. From you can get a crayon in your hand till 12 years old. It evolves in the precise same way all over the globe. So it's a universal language we have, but then, of course, our brains at some times understand now the things I'm drawing does not look like reality.
Mm.
And then most people stop drawing.
Mm.
And also because we're not encouraged to continue doing it in school, which
Right.
is in Denmark at least getting better. People are getting better and better at understanding that we have to,
Mm.
utilize all the modalities to make greater retention, understanding, and
Hmm.
engagement, and all those kind of things, which are also very, very interesting. And so do it, just do it, and don't think, if you want to use visual communication as a tool, it's not about being, of course, if you use it, you rehearse every day, you utilize it, you do of course get better, but it's not about being good at drawing. Not at all. It's being good at communicating, it's being good at listening, it's being good at visualizing ideas, and it's the ideas of things, and they are often and normally very, very simple icons of reality. So it's not, you're not doing lifelike portraits
Yeah.
or anything. It's not what it's about. It's about conveying ideas. Yeah.
Mm. Well said. Well said.
Thank you. which is of course also something I'm very, very interested in. And I don't know if that's a question of all, but now I'm just going to tell you. I'm working on. I told you I'm glad to be educated, and actually I'm working hard on trying to see if I can build even more education on top of what I've already done, because I think there's some questions that need to be answered, and it is, what is it drawing actually works as well as it does, you know. So I'm right now I'm trying to just as a start collecting as much evidence as there is, see who's been researching in stuff like this, and you know, because it draws from psychology and
Right.
and movie studies and all kinds of things, but there's not really doing a lot of studying in what is it exactly drawing does. And why does it do? Because we all feel it works when you look at a drawing, and you know, we have all kinds of sayings like a picture says more than 1,000 words.
Right.
Why is it? Why is it that it does that? That could be interesting, and maybe, and I don't know if it ends out with that, but I'm willing to do like a PhD on that subject if it comes down to that. So because and it would also be a very good selling point for people like us. But we have to draw because research tells us exactly that it works in this and that way, you know.
And here's why.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm very, very occupied of as we're going into 24. It's some of the things I'm trying to get planned out. What's the direction for this, and how do I somehow get that into motion?
Sounds like a keystone project for you, something that could be like a lifetime achievement kind of thing.
I hope so. That cool. I'm very occupied with it right now, and I've been a couple of last years, and I've also, we haven't been talking about that. I've been in some other programs we're talking about. I also made, you know, one of the first. I don't know how it is in US, but I've been one of the founders of making visual communication as you know, as graphical visual communication education that actually gives you points as in a bachelor degree in Denmark.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
That
sounds excellent.
It is. It is.
Well, Jimmy, this has been really wonderful to chat and sort of have these interesting discussions. Thank you for sharing. Of course. How can we find you? Do you have a website? Do you have social media that we should check out? What's the best way to connect with you?
I'm everywhere. I also maybe I didn't even mention I'm also a certified social media manager.
Oh, really?
I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm focused on. I was all on other platforms before, but I kind of narrowed it down, and I also have I have two different websites, one for my art and my posters, which is my name, jimiholstebro.dk, as in Denmark, and then I have the work platform, the work website for all the visualizations and movies and stuff I do, which is and it's a Danish word, it's tænk og tegn.dk, tænk og tegn, which means think and draw. And there you can see a lot of works I've done with the visualization of vision strategies, movies, teaching and stuff like that. So courses, So that's, but I think maybe the fastest way, and also of course to have contact infos and mail addresses on those websites. But I think the fastest way would probably be on one of the social media platforms.
Okay.
And everybody, you're very, very, everybody just reach out if you want to have a chat or want to ask me anything. It's okay.
So is your handle the same on all those social media platforms? And what is that handle?
My name. Jimi Holstebro.
Just Jimi Holstebro. It's pretty unique. Yeah.
Cool. That's even Steven. That's easy.
And we'll reach out to you and get links for all these things and make sure the show notes. We like to have robust show notes on the podcast.
Yeah.
So if you're listening and you want to find any of these things, you can check there and go to any of those locations.
Very welcome. Yeah. So very welcome.
Thank you, Jimmy. This has been really great. I'm so thankful for the work that you do and how you're representing visual thinking and all the thinking that goes behind what you're doing and how many people you're helping and businesses you're helping. I think it's great to have you representing the community. So thank you.
Likewise. Thank you, Mike.
And for everyone listening, that's another episode of the Sketchnote Army Podcast. Until the next episode, this is Mike and Jimmy signing off. The Sketchnote Army Podcast was created by me, Mike Rohde, and brought to you by Rohdesign Studios. It's produced and edited by Alec Polianis of AMP Creative Studios. The theme music was created by John Schiedermeyer. To support the creation of this show, I invite you to buy one of my books, the Sketchnote Handbook or the Sketchnote Workbook. You can find the books on Amazon or go to peachpit.com and use the code ROHDE40 for 40% off. Please share this podcast with other visual thinking friends, and be sure to leave a nice rating on iTunes or your favorite podcast listening app so others can find the show.